Excited. Spoilers! Spider-Man Far From Home spoiler review. You've been warned.
Yep.
Watch it first, unless you don't want to. Before we begin, I just wanted to explain how we rate spoiler-filled reviews. We break it down into 3 categories. We look at storytelling, character development, and visuals, all with a 5-star rating system. This is so we can look behind the scenes, try to understand the creators, and see if they made a masterpiece or got close. We're also going to have, though, the review from the spoiler-free, because that also shows more our excitement and our entertainment value if we feel like it's worth watching in theaters. But tell me, what did you think? How engaged were you? How did it feel?
The stuff that took place at the high school definitely kind of took me out of the experience. I became much more bored with it, and it wasn't until they actually got on the plane to go over to Europe that things started to get interesting.
To me, it made sense that Spider-Man was a struggling hero who has to make that decision now for real. So so it makes sense for him to see Iron Man dying, and then this legacy all of a sudden exists, this vacuum, and him having to fill that. And that's what the whole story really focused on. And it worked for me, but in certain moments it felt like it dumbed the character down.
Now, something that I did notice in that beginning part is I was expecting the loss of Tony to have a greater impact on Spider-Man, but it was a little bit more surface. It wasn't as deep because
That's a good point.
He was mainly wanting to, in a way, live a normal life. He was kind of so-so on the superhero aspect and was mainly just wanting to be a normal teenager.
So let's talk about the main thing, the conflict, the villain, Mysterio. I also liked Mysterio before, and for
Before
me,
the twist.
Before the twist. I already knew that there was probably going to be a twist. I assumed it. But I knew that he was more of an illusion guy. And I didn't know how they were going to do that. So I loved how they tied in Tony Stark and made it all fit.
Yeah.
But it just felt like there was a switch when the villain, they had a villainous monologue, which I didn't like. It felt forced. That transition, instead of it bringing more depth to the character and saying, ooh, he deceived him, but it makes sense, and we could see the villainous side coming through, it felt like it had been check marks. Like, oh, so villainous monologue, he deceived the protagonist. He now has to, good guy, but has to do bad things to prove that he's a villain.
And I think what might help is some of the background of how Mysterio presented himself initially, where that he was from Earth, but just a different, what is it?
Multiverse?
A different version of Earth.
Yeah, like 8-7, I forget what number it
Yeah,
is.
yeah. But that those elemental creatures had destroyed his Earth, and, he had lost a wife and different things. So there was so much depth, or at least felt like there was so much potential depth for that character. And so just shifting over to where he's this essentially disgruntled ex-Tony Stark employee.
Maybe like a good way of doing it, they could have had, it could have shown why he has this, he was so convincing, like acting out like this pain, this worry for characters. It would have been great to see him have justifiable means. It could still be stem from Tony Stark and betrayal and all of this. It could still stem from that, but show more consequences to Tony's actions. The only thing was, he named my greatest technology Barf. How dare he? Yeah. That isn't enough. So if they had tied in almost half-truths, like I'm from another multiverse, my loved ones died. Everybody died. I am alone now. Maybe have that be a consequence. Maybe have that be something that he does blame Tony for. Because then that would bring depth to Spider-Man having to realize, my actions could create villains in the future. It could have pushed it a lot more instead of just, and now we're going to have a stupid reason for this character to exist. That That's what made me feel like, okay, they felt like jesters, like they're actors.
Yeah.
Like drama actors from play, and they're just like, we all got together to do this, ha ha ha. Like that moment where he's on the bridge, he's just like, what do I say now in the script? He's like, just tell them that like they all combined for some reason and they got the core. And then he cuts, and he's like, they're all combining, they're all powerful. And it's just all of a sudden you feel the emotion behind it, but then he just cuts to, okay, that was great. And there is some sort of humor to that where he just doesn't care and everything's just happening. It's all fake. It's all show and tell. But what if he always felt that way? Wouldn't that make us care? The reason why we love Thanos is because he had so much belief in this that he was willing to kill his loved ones and he was willing to die for this belief.
Well, essentially with Thanos, he was in a way trying to do a good thing by, like lessening the kind of drain on the resources of the universe, but just through a horrendous way.
Yeah.
And so if
Right, he had like it made sense. We could understand it.
Yeah.
Somewhat justified, but
Yeah, where it was like in a twisted way he was trying to do a good thing.
Right.
And so it would have I think it would have helped if it was something similar with that.
so what do you think about the ending?
I thought that up until the post-credit scenes that it ended pretty strong. I mean, like I said before, it really reinvigorated my interest in seeing future Spider-Man movies.
Yeah. For me, it was they had so much humor in everything.
Yeah.
I'm not really sure about the ending yet. I liked it. I definitely enjoyed it. It's something that I think would require viewing it again. It's not just it didn't feel like, yes, that was satisfying in these ways. It felt like, okay, there's promise. Again, like we said in the other review, it was more focused on checkboxes of next Marvel films.
Yeah.
I didn't like the whole how Mysterio died. I didn't like how Spider-Man was fighting all these things alone. It was strange how they made no other Avengers character come in.
Yeah.
It just felt like they were. A lot of it was just like, just say this, just do this, just act this way, just it'll be fine. And those things, it bothers me when it doesn't feel as well thought out. So yeah, I mean the ending, it was nice, but it's really hard to think of like specific things. I know that like there was the breakup between the funny characters. Peter got MJ. Things seem back to normal. Awkwardness between his aunt and
Happy.
Yeah, like those things. Like, wouldn't it be? I can't remember all the strong things. Yeah, he won the day and made the cool stuff. But like then there are the post-credit post-credit scenes where you realize, oh, it was all just Skrulls who were doing it, but it wasn't villains. They were helping Nick Fury, but that's why it's justified that Nick Fury made a lot of mistakes, didn't understand things, and that's why. And so it's like, oh, just it's fine because post credits say it's fine, and then I really didn't with the identity of Spider-Man being revealed. It's almost like a twist on I Am Iron Man, because they implied it. They implied that he was going to say,
Yeah.
I'm Spider-Man, almost like he was about to announce to the world. But then it cut to, oh, it's a joke. But then anyway, it says so. So they want to have a world where Peter Parker's identity is known and how that's going to impact him. It makes sense because what other conflicts is this character, this friendly neighborhood character, going to have? So they need to bring all these consequences of people he knows. Yeah. But I didn't like how they did it. It just felt really like Mysterio had the time to do that while he got shot. Or was that a plan beforehand? Why? Like, how is this going to help Mysterio's plan?
Yeah.
To be known as a hero? Like, he's dead, right? I don't know.
Yeah. So, it's that time in the review where we give a quick synopsis of the 3 different categories: story, character, and visuals, and what we thought of each of those categories.
Okay. So first, we're going to talk about story, and then each of us will give our own opinion, and then we'll jump off to the next one. So before any ratings, we'll just quickly say my take on story was the story was more flat because of the villain, because of the conflict. That could have been better resolved. I think the personal things were better, but the overall story just didn't feel as believable.
For me, with story, I think that it flowed reasonably well, but it lost a lot of its strength due to different character motivations and all of that. It just felt fairly low in scope as far as like why the characters were doing what they were doing, even though it had a much broader impact.
Yeah. So what about for characters? What did you think?
I felt like it's kind of a mixed bag to some degree, because Spider-Man's character I felt like was stronger than in previous films, but his decisions and motivation, at least in the first half, wasn't really all that strong, but it did pick up as the film went along, like the second half.
Okay. Yeah. I loved character development. I just seeing those actors and how they portrayed the characters. There's a scene where MJ and Peter Parker kiss for the first time and they're talking and everything happened. It felt really convincing. The way that they acted as children, awkward, it was so good. And I think throughout the entire film, even Mysterio's character, it was so well played out, and the characters just, you could believe them very well. I think it's just more how the story handled that, which made you lose that. But I personally loved I care more about those characters, for sure.
All right, and our last section is visuals. And I feel like for the most part, the visuals were pretty spot on. Towards the end, I don't know, some of the CG elements seemed a little rough. Like some of the refined textures in like Spider-Man and some of the others seemed a bit flat, kind of grainy. But for the most part, I feel like it continues the precedents that Marvel set out with clean visuals and
yeah. It definitely felt the generic feeling of visuals, but I really liked how do you tell a story with elements that are mysterious and things that keep changing. I think that the way they pulled that off was really well made. Like the moment where he tries to attack the villain and he pulls and then this huge crane just falls down. Like just building that immersion. To me it worked for suspending my disbelief for sure. The visual effects were spectacular. It's like there was a switch whenever it went back to the class and they were being normal. It felt like 2 different movies. The epicness, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay, here we are. We have the rating.
Yes.
And we're gonna start with story. You'll see it
up here
between us.
Yes.
And this is what we decided together. The first one being story, and it is
a 3.
Wow. 3. Yeah.
And
so we picked this because we thought the story was lacking. It could have had more things to keep it grounded, to make these compelling characters work. But for character, it is
a 4, because we felt like the characters were believable for the roles that they were supposed to play.
Very excellent acting, excellent performance. Yeah. It was great to see. I love the characters.
Yeah.
But the story just kind of felt weird. But the last one being visuals is
also a 4.
Oh.
And it's mainly because even though a lot of times it was really good, it felt disconnected between the action and when they went to the class.
Yeah, so it felt like 2 different films almost, with the classroom being one thing, and then the action. It felt like the action just all of a sudden hit it up a notch, and it was a different movie.
Yeah.
That's the main reason. But also, here's the rating for the original review, which was 86%, what we thought overall. So we still loved it. It's just, this is the critical rating.
Yep.
What we believe as analyzing it, just nitpicking.
Yep.
But overall, we love it. We definitely see it again.
Yeah. Definitely worth a second watch.
Yeah. So thank you watching. I appreciate it. And you have watched Box Office News Reviews.
Yes.
Yeah. Anyway, goodbye.
Goodbye.